Test, test. Kenny, you ready? So we're going to have a quick panel, quick as obviously time slotted, but on outside technologies. I think we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, and we're kind of going to work the room. So if you guys have any questions, things that you guys are using, hopefully help other agency owners here in the room to kind of simplify processes. If that's one thing that COVID pandemic didn't force all of us to do, then I don't know what is simplifying process and making our work life easier and making our employees' work life easier, especially for our clients as well. So I can go ahead and start. My name is Bogus Handzel. I'm a second generation agency owner out of Chicago. Our book of business is a little under 18 million in written premium, and our niche in the market is 85% of our clientele, Polish is their first language. So for us, we struggle heavily with translations. We grew out of a non-standard shop, so we do a lot of agency bills. So we've kind of got the whole generalist agency operation, and we've managed to get through all the hiccups that kind of goes through that on the accounting side, marketing side, automation side, so on and so forth. So I'll go Eli.
Hello, my name is Eli Gillespie. I'm the owner of Gillespie Insurance Services, which is also a second generation. I bought the agency from my parents a few years ago. We're located here in California, about 2 hours north of here in Redlands, and also another location in Blythe, which is out right on the border, California, Arizona. We're quite a bit smaller than Bogus. We're about $7.5 million in premium. Our focus is commercial. We're about 80% commercial P&C, which is for agribusiness, contractors, and food service. It's about 7 of us. I say about because sometimes my wife is in, sometimes she's out. So 8, I guess. And that's it. That's pretty much it.
Sorry, before you go ahead, Gary. So Eli brought up some points that I think are important to this conversation is the size of your agency and the layout of your agency. So I have 4 locations. I have 28 employees. And then our mix of book is roughly 50-50 on the commercial and the personal line side. So,
I'm Gary Paulson. Have Mid-Columbia Insurance down in southeastern Washington, the other Washington nobody knows about. We have 3 offices that are within a 60-mile radius of each other. And probably we're 100% personal lines, mostly non-standard auto. And we have 2 people in each office, 1 agent, 1 CSR, and so a total of 8 of us total, and about the same size as Eli's. So, and let's see, Paul was talking, this is our 25th anniversary as well, since we opened our agency October 95.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So room, let's show hands of who was forced to adapt some sort of new technology when the pandemic hit. I like that HawkSoft is raising their hand. If you guys mind saying like what you guys may have had to implement?
We're using Slack. We further implemented Slack.
So Slack, team communications.
Yeah, we actually opened the Zoom room, believe it or not, in August before then, but nobody ever really knew what Zoom was at that point.
Okay.
It was a TV show back in the 70s, if anyone remembers that. But we learned to adapt that quicker using Slack as well as communication. Working remotely was a huge benefit to us because we were ahead of the game with our team. So that was a lot of things we had to embrace.
Okay. Do most people use some sort of like team communication, like either Microsoft Teams or Slack within their offices? No. So anything else other than team communication, maybe team management that you guys were forced to kind of implement within the agency structure with the pandemic? If you guys want to talk, raise your hand. Kenny's running around with a mic. Make him work for it.
Probably like everyone. I mean, we weren't working from home at all. And I have 3 locations. One of them's a 1-person office, so that changed, overnight. Thankfully, 1 location had VoIP phones, and I was supposed to get that in the other one. Never got around to it, but that changed when we grabbed, the kitchen phone and the conference room phone out of one office and took them in, and through the miracle of tech support out of Ukraine, I was actually able to get them set up on the network in a week and survive it all. And now we're all VoIP, and things are infinitely better than what it was. And the work from home is now hybrid, where everyone gets 2 or 3 days a week from home, and they absolutely love it. So, but we have not gotten into these outside technologies, which we need to. So that's glad to see this on the agenda.
So yeah, I mean, that's a good starting point is, coming over from, for me personally, our agency, we've been on HawkSoft, I think it's going to be 2.5 years now. And Kenny can kind of attest to it, is we came in kind of swinging as to what we needed for our agency to be able to do. And we were on another larger vendor, which I got scolded on mentioning their name at this conference, so I won't. But we were stuck in a rut where, most of our employees, their tenures between 25 and 30 years with our agency. Our agency's been in front of 31, so you're looking at employees, number 3, number 6, that basically grew out of a TAM-based system, or a Linux-based system, moved over everything server in-house, and then my brother and I come in, young guns swinging, saying, hey, like this is 20 years ago. We need to kind of implement, change things moving forward. And we jumped on HawkSoft because it was the easiest for us to break those tendencies that they had with the old AMS system and start fresh new with something, in our opinion, that was better and more structured. That's why we moved over to HawkSoft. But I feel like there's a lot of agencies here in the HawkSoft room, is that you guys did get forced from going from being completely brick and mortar to now adapting, hey, I need to start working from home, or do I even care that this guy's on vacation because he's getting his job done, because I can look at the analytics in HawkSoft to see that everything's getting accomplished. Was anybody completely remote before the pandemic? Are you completely remote for all your employees?
Yes, completely.
How large of an operation are you? if you don't mind?
5 employees.
5 employees?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. 5 employees.
Okay.
And I'm a specialty niche agency with Lawyers Professional, and lawyers don't want to take the time to meet with you, so it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, or it costs money, right? That's good. Okay. And then has everybody else gone completely back to brick and mortar operations here, or is everyone kind of a hybrid now, where you have 50%?
We never went off of it.
Never closed?
No, we never did, except for my office manager. And the only reason that she works out of the house at all is she's got 2 kids in elementary school, and she was doing that before. So we really didn't change at all. We're socially distanced. Everything's cleaned down all the time, and we haven't had any problems. And they're thrilled to be in the office, to have somewhere to go to work, to separate work and, and pleasure. So I do have a question for you, though. This is an important one.
Yeah.
Sox or Cubs?
Cubs.
Okay, I'll stay then.
I gave up on baseball a long time ago, and I've also given up on the Blackhawks now, and then the Bulls are starting to kind of make a reemergence. So, but Cubs. I was born in the North Side, so. The Sky, yeah, we actually watched that game yesterday. So, but right now my mind just set on golf for some reason. So I guess it must be hitting that age where everybody's just golfing, networking, stuff like that. So, but that's a good question. Yeah, so we are, with 28 employees, we left our offices open for those that felt comfortable, obviously. But one of the biggest things that we kind of challenges that we had was, hey, we have these tenured employees that have been here for quite some time. They only know how to work in the office. How do I show them that they can work from home, not miss a beat, be connected to the office with Slack or Teams, and know what's going on? And HawkSoft's done a great job of making that available with logs and those processes. But voice over IP phones, that's a big thing. We use Lightspeed. That's a big part of the way that our organization works. Is
Outside technologies, click.
outside technologies. And we have very, very heavily, and Gary brought his laptop, and he can show you guys, we use Slack, but we also use Zapier to kind of connect a few things within Slack. So that works great for building, let's say, team morale. One of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that our team members are praised by the clients that they serve, so we have them get Google reviews. I know that you do this pretty well too. That way we rank highly within Google for searching, and then as soon as a Google review comes in, Zapier kicks it, say, hey, if it's 4 or 5 stars, the team sees it. If it's anything below that, it goes directly to me where I can kind of reach out to that client. Kind of how Rocket Referrals works in the same way, where you have that score what's it called?
NPS.
NPS score. You can set after, if it's lower, it goes directly to you. If not, it goes on. What's nice about Zapier is that, or Google Slack and Zapier is that it hits the whole team. And it's a notification for everybody to see it, and we've got Carlton dancing as an emoji to it and everything. So that really boosts the team morale and culture in those situations. Anyone doing something else like that within their office? Yes, what is Zapier? So Zapier, do you want to? This is a good answer.
I wanna know.
Okay, Zapier is a tool that integrates two programs that aren't designed to work together. So just imagine, I was thinking today, a good example is Ivans. Everybody here probably has an idea what Ivans does. Carrier has their exit. They send data out. The agency management systems have an input. Ivans translates the carrier so it goes into your management system. Zapier does the same thing, but with all other programs. It'll take this program here that's, let's say, your voicemail. Your Lightspeed does, I don't know if Lightspeed does it, but we get a voicemail in. I can say, that voicemail doesn't integrate with anything, but it does send an email. I take that email, have Zapier pull it in, do some
To
magic
HawkSoft?
to it, and it'll take and put it into Slack so that everybody knows there's a voicemail that needs to be dealt with. So
like I said, Gary, the way to answer your question is not yet into HawkSoft, right, Kenny? But
No comment.
and I think that's a big thing with task coming is Gary and I heavily use Slack to use it as kind of a task assignment system, right? So we do, on the commercial side, being our niche, we do a lot of handyman contractors, that kind of stuff. And we get certificate requests up the wazoo. Living in Chicago, anything from everybody under the sun being additional insured to just a basic name, address, so on and so forth. Roughly, we probably do close to between 1,500 and 2,000 on a monthly basis. All that comes through Slack, gets assigned evenly, and then they have a little competition. If they, for some reason, get an email that has 10 requests on it at the end of the month, they get a prize from the person that's helping assign them. So we basically use it as a support system to HawkSoft, to kind of alleviate the pressure where you have to have something easily visible in a fast-moving environment. Slack helps us kind of mediate the way that workflow goes, because on top of those certificate requests, we're also a high call volume agency because everything that comes into our agency literally needs to be translated over to the carrier. Every conversation, every claim, everything. So on a daily basis, we're anywhere between 150 and 200 inbound calls. Now try to manage all that through just a management system, it's tough to do, right? So now with HawkSoft 6 coming out in the task center, the goals is, to have that easily available, but to make those repetitive tasks easily assignable so everyone kind of stays on the same page with the processes. And then use those outside systems like Slack, like Zapier. And Zapier, like Gary said, it connects to everything. You can connect it to Google Sheets, you can connect it to direct mailers, you can connect it to basically everything in a series of connections and kind of work together to make that whole agency.
I've got a question.
He's got one before you,
okay.
So. But
Mine is kind of an agency management type question. I'm in California now, and actually in San Diego, and everything's changing in California. Homeowners, the rates are going up 50 or more percent. Companies are changing the rules. Everything is moving. Now, in the office, we have a lot of interaction, so we don't make any mistakes. We don't do something we shouldn't do. How do you guys deal with that if everybody's separate?
Could you repeat his question into the mic?
his question, to simplify it, you want to make sure that accountability is held there, right? So there aren't any mistakes with the changes.
Everything's changing. Underwriting rules, everything. There's restrictions. They're accepting different risks. So there's a lot of chatter in the office. We're all in there. There's a lot of chatter. We're mostly personal lines. This is mostly on the homeowner side. How do you deal with not having that communication and interaction?
In office, it's always easier to just walk over to somebody like, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah, there's constantly that in my office right now.
So I don't know if you have it up on your Slack, but basically what we do is we've created sub-channels for specific carriers. And my requirement is if they want to continue to be able to work from home as an agency owner, the respect has to be that if they've read something, they check mark it. because then when I can go back and see and I see, hey, I posted this, I understand why we're having this conversation now about this error is because this was posted. I know that you got hit with it, but you never check marked it as read. If they physically have to check mark it, then I can make the assumption that they actually read what I had posted on there. And if it's an important announcement, you can pin it to the top to make sure it never goes away. So, but with those things, especially if there's if you're in a market that's constantly changing, what I would utilize is hyperlinking something within the agency announcements of HawkSoft, because that way it's front and center, right? Ideally, you want HawkSoft to be your main hub for everything, because that's where all the data is stored. So if they're looking at HawkSoft on a daily basis, and you have some sort of announcements like that, make it just a Word file or a Google Sheet, and just hyperlink in big exclamation points, be like, click here for an update, and do like a weekly or some sort of schedule.
In the HawkSoft announcements?
Yeah.
Can I ask my question?
Of course.
So what does it look like from like a step-by-step process, like for the certificate request? Like someone calls and emails and something happens. What does that look like? It goes to Zapier, and then it goes to this, and then it goes to Slack, and then someone sees it. What does that actually look like? How does that A, B, C, D, E, how does that go?
So it's not a simplified process for me. It's something that I kind of go back, if this is directed directly towards me.
Yeah.
Certificates aren't anything that are getting easier on a day-to-day basis. And I think you guys all understand as agency owners, they're just getting more and more difficult. Ryan Reese isn't here, but he developed the certificate wizard, and me and him go back and forth on use case scenarios as to what needs to happen for that workflow to kind of get simplified in the agency side. But basically what we do is, with the language translations and everything, we force everything to come in a digital format. And by digital format, I mean their text message and or email, right? Because then you're having less callbacks back and forth about making sure the address is spelled correctly, so on and so forth. If they have an idea of what it is, they can Google it and verify it. And then what it does is it goes into, so we have that basically go directly into Slack. And
So that's an email?
An email. So Slack, you can have outside email like Google or Gmail and Microsoft Office, Outlook, thank you, connected to Slack as an API, and it will bring in those emails for you. But Slack also gives you an option to get a separate email address directly from Slack, where it goes to Slackbot, which is Slackbot's their internal, basically little critter that will be able to assign things if needed. So, but there was another one where we looked at, you're working within all these systems, right? You're working within HawkSoft, you're working within Slack. If you're working within Teams, you're working within Teams. Then you've got your marketing to worry about, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so on and so forth. How to kind of centralize that. And if HawkSoft can't do that, unfortunately, because they're a really good agency management system, you need some other hub to be able to facilitate all those outside technologies. And what we've realized is Slack being so large, and Teams is catching up to it if you're using Teams, they already have those direct integrations. So you can do multiple types of software programs working within that same, let's say, hub. So Slack has one called MailClark, where basically an email goes out to an address that you've specified, let's say help@handzel.com. It comes into Slack, and then the team member has the ability to either reply within that Slack channel thread, directly to that email, upload documents.
Which is shared, so everyone knows, we got an email, Steve is on it.
Right.
We all see this because it all popped up on our Slack.
Right, and it even goes far enough to, and I've moved away from it briefly, but I actually might move back to the fact that it'll give you googly eyes, an emoji, on that thread, showing that person that got that response email has opened and seen it.
Is this possible to pull
Mail
up the
Clark.
screen?
So is Slack sort of like a shared email then? Is that how it's functioning?
I would use it as more sort of like a message board. I think that's the easiest way to kind of compare Slack to any, inter-office message board. Like the conversations that you're having, on a daily basis with your coworkers, it's basically up on Slack because they're chatting amongst each other anyways.
I came up before the class.
And then you bring in the emojis and the GIFs and everything, and it creates it definitely
Spice it up.
it definitely increased the level of culture that we had in our agency, given that ability, but maintaining the fact that they could work out of it.
So here's our Slack from our office right now. You'll see, let's see, this is our calls channel. So calls that came in, the CSR took the call and filled out a little gravity form on a web form that we had, and it sent it to Slack. So that then we actually created little emojis for everybody, their face, so I can look at it real quickly and see Daisy took the call and handled it. And, or here this call came in.
That's a separate call. That's not part of like one
Right,
long.
this is all one. So she took care of that.
Okay.
Here's another call that came in. The client wanted to add a vehicle. Daisy took care of it. Esteban, took care of that call. You can see we've got the HawkSoft link there. They can actually click on that, and it takes them right into HawkSoft to that client, because that CMS client ID will causes a link to HawkSoft.
That lowest one, does that mean someone needs to handle that? Because there's no follow-up icon underneath
somebody
it?
hasn't taken care of this one.
Okay.
I see incoming call. Oh, the phone's ringing. She can't get to it. She's asking somebody, please pick it up.
Okay.
So it must have been ringing. So that, and here's different channels that we have. Main is where we keep track of our
Gary, before you go
Yeah.
to that, do you guys understand that Gary, at this point, let's say the one from Brendan, he can click on that CMS link and it'll open up that client in HawkSoft for him, right? So you're seeing multiple sources, right? Because I'm assuming that the one that says IFS Rater, that's a new inbound lead.
Right. That's
coming in.
actually a link. That would take a link to our rater and transfer all the information the CSR collected and transfer it to the rater, so we don't have to retype it.
Are you on HawkSoft Anywhere?
Yeah, we're on the online, HawkSoft
Okay.
Online. Yeah. But I think that works.
Yeah, this would function with local or HawkSoft Online.
But not HawkSoft Anywhere?
That is on
HawkSoft Anywhere is HawkSoft Online.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Okay. I thought it was a separate thing.
Yeah,
the
okay.
program.
So anyway, it's hard not having the monitor. So main, is where, as they work during the day, here's me saying I'm having a rough time in San Diego. Sent that last night or this morning. But here, Kyle sold a policy today. It was an auto policy with SafeGo over the phone. It was the first policy today and his first one, and it was in English. And, so same thing here. Car policy by Daisy, Progressive, phone, first policy for her, second one for the agency.
Hey, Gary,
Yep.
could you hit like Control Plus and zoom in a little?
Yeah, make it easier for me to see too. Oops, control.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so then, so each, and this is all done by Zapier, translating when they write a policy, they update our lead management system, and it automatically sends it to Zapier. Zapier sends it to Slack. We all, get to see what everybody's doing during the day. So I had a good day on Friday. Left the office and had written 5 policies by the end of the day. Not a usual occurrence for me.
And then to avoid your question about reminding people about changes that are going on within the industry or whatever might be in your specific market, Gary, if you want to scroll all the way down, I believe I saw a Slack bot at the bottom there of that main channel that you had there. You had a reminder set up. So you want to scroll through your main channel all the way to the bottom?
Oh,
No, to your actual channel.
okay, gotcha.
So what we can do is within Slackbot, so here is a reminder, Solidarity does not allow exclude drivers on policies. Gary's had that set up. I think either you probably have that set up on a time frame.
Right, I think every 6 weeks or
Yeah, so
3
you can
months.
set up things like that, and I believe you can also do that with Teams where it pops up and it reminds you on a specific time frame. Or you can even do is if someone, let's say, in our main office, we go round robin on the assignment of new quotes. If someone says new quote, a spreadsheet pops up for them with Slackbot saying, hey, here's this spreadsheet that you were looking for.
Gary, you mentioned exporting data from Slack to your rater.
Right.
Do you have to set up do you have a template that has specific fields so it knows what data goes where over there?
Right. TurboRater has a very rudimentary web interface. So it'll let you send a URL to TurboRater when you call it and say, F name equals whatever, L name for first name, last name equals, And there's about 12 fields that you can submit over. And so it just takes the information that was collected by the CSR, puts that into the URL, and opens up TurboRater for rating, and that information's filled.
So the CSR takes information, but in a very specific pattern, like it's got to be first.
She's got a form.
She has a form,
that
okay.
she fills out.
Okay.
Yeah. and
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. Oh, I keep forgetting it's over there.
Can this all be done on Teams as well?
Probably.
Yeah, Teams, ever since Slack came out, and the pandemic hit, Teams has made a huge movement to make sure they improve their product. So I am aware that a lot of things have been able to do, you can do on Teams now. And it's easier because if you're on Office 365, it's already
Built
part-
in.
built
Yeah,
in.
that's why I asked, because it's included. I mean, most people have Microsoft.
Yeah, so if I was probably starting over, I'd probably look at Teams first, but because I started this before the pandemic hit and before Teams had moved where they are now, I think we've surpassed, I think, over 200,000 communications sent in Slack.
Yeah.
It's
You're
tough
invested.
I'm invested. It's tough to kind of move away from that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just an interesting offhand note. We always refer to HawkSoft as the house that Microsoft built. We use Office 365 and Teams, so it's kind of it's the direction the wind is blowing in terms of what we look at internally, Power Automate, Microsoft Business Intelligence, those types of things. And as we go towards Azure more and more, I think Teams and Office 365 is a pretty safe place to be. But this
what I
Slack
think.
is also
Yeah.
amazing.
Is anyone using Teams as their phone system? How's it work?
So I guess I should probably start off with some background. Worked at Microsoft for many years in the insurance field, helped build the whole industry for Microsoft Insurance. So I know a lot of this stuff, and I took over my dad's agency just recently, unexpectedly actually. So I'm implementing a lot of that digital transformation there. So it works pretty well. We use a local telecom provider right now, and it's been a whirlwind to find resources to help with implementing Microsoft products for small companies, which is actually atypical. It was a surprise for me. So I have to look for those resources still. But from basically just working with my local telco, we were able to integrate it. So I wouldn't recommend it right now. Because for small businesses, it's very hard to get the resources and the knowledge unless you have that background. So I would say Lightspeed or RingCentral or one of the
Bridge.
other ones. Those are pretty good default solutions. But I actually talked to somebody at HawkSoft to see if there's ways that you guys can integrate, because I think that's going to be a key from a bridge perspective.
So one thing that, last thing I'll show here is talking about it, your office, if it's not centralized anymore. Our office has never been centralized because we run a very lean machine with, six people basically spread over 3 different offices. But any call that comes in rings to all 3 offices, to everybody's desk. It's almost like everybody's at home. There's no difference. There was no reason to go home because you had one coworker in the office. We just locked our doors and put a sign out that's curbside service. Call the number, we'll come out and help you. And so you end up with a message like the one there at the bottom that just says they need to make a change, that nobody's able to get that call. But now anybody can go ahead and handle that call. Any of the agents can call back. And so like here from the other day, she left a message, and whoever that is, Kyle, took care of it. So, so this is one way, like any process you have, you don't have to worry about it, something falling through the cracks, because we can go back through and see, did everybody get called back? Everybody can see, that everybody's been handled.
Well, for marketing, I'm sorry, can you go ahead?
So we're a newer agency, been in business for 3 years, grown pretty quickly. We're at 5 people now. And the thing that we've struggled with is having everything segregated. And so your lead management system different from your phone system, different from where you're storing your documents. So we're trying to make the move to making HawkSoft the central hub for everything. But you can't get information into HawkSoft. You can only get information out of HawkSoft. So how do you guys handle that from whether it be a new client coming in that's been in the lead management system, or if you're using a ticketing system, where are you putting your notes? Where are you actually handling it? Because there's not really, that we see, a great way to have it in one spot. And we spend more time sometimes looking for it than we do actually addressing the issue.
For us, it's all copied or if it's a client, it gets logged. Now, as they're a lead, I don't need to document every call I make to them attend. But for us, once they become a client, if we get a message, like, thing goes here on Slack, the call, the agent also put a note in, that so-and-so called. And, then when the agent calls them back, they mark it done here and they log it in HawkSoft that it was done. And so for us, HawkSoft is your Bible. If it's not there, it didn't happen. If I run a report and it says that you haven't done anything, for the last hour, I'm going to call you and say, why haven't you why haven't you talked to any clients? Or, today, if I look at it and say, you had 3 hours where you did nothing because there's nothing logged in HawkSoft, that means you did nothing. And there's lots of work to do.
Yeah, it's like Gary said, when you look at our agency announcements, I basically have it in 3 different panels. On the far right, I have birthdays coming up, team celebrations. On the far left, I have super important announcements, either being market related, or office closure, so on and so forth. But straight dab in the middle, I have, if it's not in HawkSoft, it didn't happen. So what I could see the problem for you being is you want to make sure that everything is logged. We use Slack as kind of I'd say a task management system, even though it's not a task management system, it's more of a communication tool. But we've kind of, our process of created to make sure that that's the way that it is used. But then everything gets logged in HawkSoft. And our culture and our teammates is that if someone's lagging behind, they are first let them know, like, hey, we're struggling over here, especially with the volume of calls and the pandemic and everything. They let them know, so I don't necessarily have to go in there and double check it. But, if I run an activity report and I summarize by user in HawkSoft, I can see who did what sort of activity, right? And if it's logged correctly, or if it's logged by the process that I've set forth, I know how many emails have been in and out, I know how many calls have been taken in and out, I know how many walk-ins have been in and out, so then I can make a decision, hey, this brick and mortar office I have over here, does it make sense to renew this lease? Because I'm only getting, 3 cash payments in a month. So I can use that data later to make sure that my business decisions are going the correct path. So what I would do is, what we had to do is go back to step 1, clean the construction site, figure out what metrics are going to be important for you to make sure you're making the right business decisions 3 to 5 years from now. Don't do it on a day-to-day basis, because you're not going to be able to look into what's going on within all your systems on a day-to-day basis unless you do take a larger time frame, basically. So, and I think Kenny can talk about what HawkSoft has done to make sure that outside technologies can kind of connect in, because the frustration of getting data into HawkSoft is something that everybody shares, just where HawkSoft is in their journey right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And hi, just so everybody knows, I'm Kenny Hendricks. I'm HawkSoft's Director of Partner Integrations. So I'm the wolf in the herd right now. And yeah, it's, as Gary said, if it's on HawkSoft, it didn't happen. 4 years ago, no, I guess, let's say 4 years ago at the first HUG National Conference, I sat down with an agent, Christina Kobos, out of Ohio, and she told me that. She said, it's not in HawkSoft, it didn't happen. And I have carried that through my entire run as someone who oversees what we do with our partners. And every meeting I have with development, that's the first thing I ask for. We need an API that does logs, because the double entry, that dedication to getting a login on HawkSoft is amazing. It's also totally redundant, and you shouldn't have to do it. And I could tell you that Matt Amon, our cloud architect here, he couldn't be here. He was supposed to, but he unfortunately couldn't be. He told me, let people know for the API, webhooks and logs is the top priorities. So what that means is with webhooks, pushing data out, getting data back in a real-time process. And then logs, he understands we need some accounting of what third parties do with your data. And so the ambition And the goal of our API with HawkSoft 6 is that we will give our integrated partners the capacity to, if they do something with HawkSoft data, it is documented in HawkSoft. Send an email, received a call, did a text message, comes back to HawkSoft, some type of log and record. Text messaging is actually a really good example. When that was designed, there was a lot of internal fighting because it was designed to have a secondary log stream, which is how it functions right now. If you use HawkSoft text messaging, there's a infallible record of what interactions you're doing that in some ways is even more secure than a log note. We just haven't fused the streams yet. You select the ones you want, you copy and paste it into the system. We want to eliminate that copy and paste step because it's now what we would say like a game of inches, a game of seconds. The big automation's done. We've saved you the hours. Now it's about saving you the minutes and the seconds, which over time amount to a lot. So I hear you. I appreciate that you're not chasing me out of here because it doesn't exist yet. But this recording is going right on Matt Amon's desk Friday morning when I'm back in the office.
So a quick follow-up to that question then is, because we do a lot of employee benefits and commercial, so, I mean, even being a smaller agency, we may have a month where we term out 300 or 400 employees. And so that's a lot of log notes, a lot of tickets that we create. So are you guys handling that type of thing via suspenses right now?
So yeah, I don't do any employee benefits, so I don't know the mass scale of that, but thinking about it just in my head right now about tracking the amount of, let's say, clients under a file could be difficult, but basically I use suspenses and activities, I use them one another to make sure that my people are hitting specific KPIs I've set forth for them. You know, if I look in the system, I pull that data, I say, hey, this person has, 400 preset suspenses into the future. That's great. That person's being proactive, right? They don't have any in the backlog. They're all caught up. That's great. But then I look at another guy and I say, hey, this guy's 60 behind over 30 days. One's from 2 years ago. What's going on? What's the conversation that I have to have with them about that? So, yeah, basically, like I said, if it's not HawkSoft, it didn't happen. So that's the most important piece of technology within the agency, and using Slack as kind of a backup or Teams, to plug in those outside vendors, being marketing vendors or being, lead generation vendors, because there you kind of use things it's a little bit more real time and quicker. Where HawkSoft, because of the way that it's created, and it forces you for data accuracy and purposes to go through click by click, make sure that things are in there. You can't sometimes function the way that an agency needs to function, or any small business needs to function, right? So that data integration with the APIs moving forward, that's going to be a huge plus for a lot of them. Agency owners, because they're going to be able to, let's say, bypass certain things that say Slack has to offer right now without needing to go through Slack to do it.
So Eli, what outside vendors are you using, or partner vendors, we'll say?
Rocket Referrals, ePay. I don't know if they're out there in the room, but I use Indio and Appulate, EasyLinks, VCheck, and Zywave. Those are probably my main outside vendors.
So outside vendors that I currently use right now, I'm going to go just with the ones that are integrated. I'd probably say Lightspeed. I'm trying to remember who's still on there and not on there.
Twist the knife.
But I've usually, if it's gone to the marketplace, I've dabbled in it. So be it Certificial, be it Rocket Referrals. We use Rocket Referrals heavily with our other management system. That just are in the same path of their journey where HawkSoft is now. So the data isn't coming across the way it should be. And that's another thing is that, having conversations with Kenny for, these last few years and being part of the board, I get to talk to him more often, is that a lot of these outside vendors that you do have access to in the marketplace, they don't know the data that they're getting from HawkSoft. So they might say, hey, we can't do this because we're not getting it. And you might have that conversation with Kenny or someone in marketing and be like, no, they have this. Right now, it's you guys speaking up to forcing them to go back into their product development and implement some of those data hooks, because they're on a different part of their journey, right? They're thinking ahead. They've already touched HawkSoft. They've kind of, done 80% of the work, and it works, and they've got clients on and so forth. They move forward. But now HawkSoft is giving them more data, and they haven't gone back to take a look at it. So take a look at your technology stack and see, hey, this is what I need to kind of look at and really work with in my agency. And take a look at the ones, your employees don't want you to throw new things at them every single day. I've made that mistake. We launched maybe like 5 or 6 different outside technologies in like a month, and they're just like, Bogus, you're killing me here. Like you can't do that. Take time. If you're in an agency operations role, if you don't have somebody else to do it, make sure that they investigate and learn about the product, and make sure that you're getting the data that you need from your management system, right? Because that's what, basically what I do is that's sacred. That's the number one key piece of technology within my agency, is that management system, because that's where everything lives, all the history and everything. So make sure that anyone who's plugging in, even if it's a one-way API integration, that they're getting the right data. So, and if you need to go back and clean it up, do it on some test files, see how it works.
You guys mentioned APIs and stuff. Just a quick question in terms of the power stack within Microsoft going to Azure. Have you looked at utilizing some of that for building what you're talking about? Yeah. Okay. And so, is that coming out in 6? Is that when we should expect it? All right.
Yeah. So Sean's presentation, he touched on it. HawkSoft 6 is built on Microsoft Azure. And data services, yeah, the whole thing. It's a gargantuan task. Sean often describes it as rebuilding the airplane without disturbing the passengers mid-flight. And what we're working towards is unlocking the data. Because right now, HawkSoft's data lives on a server in distinct, separate files. It's very difficult from a programming stance to interact with, especially because we encrypt those files to protect your data. And so the reason we don't have a write-back API today is because interacting with that data requires us to have access to the file, decrypt the file, change the data, encrypt the file, get out. Whereas when we get to Azure, it's change the data, because it's all there as the source of truth. And we went with Azure because we are a full Microsoft stack company. When we pivoted when we transitioned from DOS to Windows, we embraced .NET, Microsoft frameworks, all of that stuff. That's how we do everything. And so I know that we plan on leveraging SQL functionality of Azure, the microservices functionality, the redundancy in data, the backups, whole 9 yards. And I know we're looking at Power Automate and all the different Office 365 tools that play into that, because it's just easier. Like, we want to work smart, not hard. And the Microsoft route is working smart for us. Yeah. We're definitely going to talk.
To kind of go back to their question about what outside technologies using, I mean, obviously everyone's using an email thing, but we're also utilizing pretty heavily our website builder. They're not here, but Advisor Evolve, they have a pretty cool plugin that works within HawkSoft that basically that lead goes right into HawkSoft and creates a file for us. And everything else is kind of picking and choosing and make sure that I play around with a lot of programs, especially if you go into Slack and the website vendor, Advisor Evolved. What? Advisor Evolved. If I play around with a lot of things, but I basically have a channel in Slack that says Bogus breaks things, because a lot of things just don't work. And it's kind of figuring out how to make sure that my team sees the most valuable information to make sure the agency's moving in the right direction. And any technology I do plug in that I do, it has to make sure that it doesn't impact culture negatively. I think I look at that really highly. And if data redundancy, that's what Kenny said, is a lot of things is, we as insurance agents know that we're duplicating data basically every day, right? If it's on this system, it's in Safeco's, it's in Traveler systems, so on and so forth. How do we kind of move that data through? So I'm looking at like, hey, if I have person A over here and they're a great worker B and they can zoom through things, if it's going to throw a hiccup in their chain or not. Because if that hiccup hits, the rest of the team is going to feel it. And Gary says his office functions, his locations function is one. Our our staff as well with the voice over IP is we treat everything with Lightspeed is it rings at all of our offices. The client doesn't know if you're talking to somebody in our main office, our south side office, so forth, or someone working at home or even traveling. But technology has allowed us to make sure that we don't miss a step, even if they're out of, in a different country traveling and enjoying what they can right now. So I'd probably say the main ones is Lightspeed, Slack, and then a kind of a mosh pit of what lasts longer than the next program.
Now for us, we'll use DocuSign, which we use a lot. Kind of you were talking.
Oh, yeah. Hello sign, yeah.
Matter of fact, we looked at moving away from them, but it would cause a hiccup in our office.
You haven't gotten the price call yet, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm paying the price. I've gotten 2 of them. So, but I spent a month trying to research changing to somebody else, but when I looked at it, it was like, okay, DocuSign ends up being twice as much as the next vendor, but they do things that I can't do with the other vendors. So it would take my people more time to finish an app. And it's like, it's a trade-off. I want to make it smooth for my people. I don't want to cause that hiccup. So we stuck, my wife finally made the decision for me. She goes, I said, I don't know what to do, explain everything. She goes, it sounds like you already have. Make the decision, get up, pay him the money. But then the other we've been using is Glovebox. It's similar to Insurance Agent app. It works for clients have the agency application app that they can pull up their policy and so forth. It's called Glovebox. Yeah, and the difference between the two, Insurance Agency app, as I understand it, uses Ivans for their data management. That's how they get their information. Whereas Glovebox gets it from the carrier. You want to pull up your policy. You actually, when you log into the app, you log into the SafeGo app in the background. So they're pulling information that's current as of right now for the carrier, not what downloaded from Ivans or while it's waiting for your change to process through and so forth.
Are your customers using the app significantly?
As much as any app. They're not. There's not a high percentage.
I've found that too. I'm using the Insurance Agent app.
Yeah.
I love it. I wish I could get more people on board.
Yeah, that's the problem with those apps is it's just one more step to get your people through. Others that we've looked at, and I think you said Agency Zoom is a partner that's here, well worth looking at with what they're doing. I've been trying for a year to convince myself to move over, because right now for our lead management system, it's a system built in Infusionsoft that's used for like online marketing. And I always compare it to, it's like a 5,000 piece Lego set that you get at the garage sale. You can build anything you want with it, but you've got to build it. And so it's really, really difficult. You can build the Death Star, you just don't know how. So, Infusionsoft, yeah. I've never recommended it to anybody because I don't want to be the support call person. I can't use anything else right now, and I love what it does, but I don't want to be the support person when they take my advice. And Canopy Connect is the other one that we've used that's very interesting for preferred agency. It doesn't work for us as a non-standard agency because most of our clients come without prior insurance. But it's well worth looking at where your clients actually can log into they log into their State Farm app through Canopy. Canopy downloads all of their docs for all of their policies and drops them in your inbox. So.
Does anybody else use Canopy? I'm using it. I don't use it a lot, but I do use it. One of the things that is really great is you don't have to talk to the client about. I'm sorry. I use it. You don't have to ask the client about what they have because they have full coverage, right? At 15, 30, and 5 or whatever they have, but they have full coverage, right? So once you can see their policy, you can talk to them and explain what you really have is this. What you need to have is what I'm going to offer you. The other agent or Geico or whatever sold you something that was a great price, but they didn't sell you a really good product and good service. So it's very helpful in terms of that. Plus, again, you can quickly put in the data yourself by copy and paste rather than ask the same questions everybody asks when they call for a quote, right? So you're asking what's your name, date of birth. Well, you've got a lot of the stuff there from Canopy. Not necessarily all of it, but you've got a lot of it. So that helps you on the sales again. I think getting the copy of the policy lets you understand who they are, and asking them more about who they really are can help you sell it.
My question is for Kenny. A couple of years ago, at the conference in Vegas, I believe that was the one. Gary, you kind of reminded me of it. We use a lead management system. We use Blitz. So that's another thing where we have to drop information in and, dual key entry and all that kind of stuff. And I asked a question to the panel. I said, when is HawkSoft going to let me get rid of Blitz and not have to pay that fee, and we can do that in HawkSoft? And then Paul Hawkins came running up the aisle and said, we're working on that. We're working on the formations and all that, and he was very excited. Where are we at? Lead management system. We do a quote, and then you're doing the follow-ups, and it's the mapping.
Kenny,
He said you were working on the mapping.
can I say something before, and then you can say where
Please,
HawkSoft is?
give me time to think.
Yeah.
Well, I think I could probably answer that a little better than you.
Yeah. My thought is that I'm not sure I want HawkSoft to do it, because how many vendors do we have here today that do lead management, and they all do it differently? When it's in HawkSoft, you're going to have to do it the HawkSoft way, and I want it to be that an email goes out on these days, text message goes out on these days, my people get notified in Slack to call, on this cadence, and so far I've not found any lead management system that can actually do what I want it to do. So I don't expect HawkSoft to be able to do it the way I want it to. So, it would be, maybe you could say, well, we want a simplified system in HawkSoft because that's what you're going to get, but you're still going to end up needing that out. If you really want to get, I want a system that follows up.
Before
Bogus, do you have more before I start?
Yeah, before Kenny kind of goes into it, I think, like Gary said, a lot of the times when you pick technologies, outside technology, it's usually a personal choice, right? It might work for you, but it might not work for your staff, and it's kind of, you're trying to find what works best for you as a whole organization. And I think that HawkSoft's done a really good job of creating a toolbox within HawkSoft that gives you a bare, minimum viable product, right? So maybe it works in some aspects, but when you want to take that step further, that's when you kind of have to take a look at an outside technology, because that's all they solely do, and they're going to kick butt at it. Now it's making sure that the two connect, so you're not feeling it, but making sure that your customers aren't feeling it either, right? Because if your customers start feeling it, that's a whole other set of frustrations as an agency owner that you kind of have to go through. And I know that they've, with everything, with the new task systems and coming out, it's steps forward to where we'll create a toolbox for agencies to be able to kind of function in some sort of aspect towards the marketing, but not in one that's as developed, let's say Blitz or Agency Revolution or with other ones out there.
Yeah. I'm presenting as part of our general session tomorrow, so I don't want to steal too much of my own thunder. But to Bogus's point, HawkSoft embraces what we'd call a platform approach, where we recognize that we're not the be-all, end-all. We have done a lot of personal growth over the last 5-10 years, shed a lot of the hubris around we can do everything, and we understand that it's better to have allies than to build ourselves a walled garden and not let anybody in. So to that point, I just wrote down Blitz Ken May, because we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to get in touch with Blitz, and we're going to get them connected. But in addition to that, I need to probe this a little. So when you say lead management, are you talking, you have a form on your website, you get a prospect into HawkSoft, you take it from there, or are you saying, I have a prospect in HawkSoft, and I want to take them through the stages of my sales funnel?
Exactly what Gary was talking about. We do a quote, we move that information into the lead management system.
Okay.
And we set it up where, just like he said, we tailor
Okay, so you're describing a level of marketing automation. Is that accurate? Where you're saying, I have this quote, I need to outreach at this point. Is that what we're saying? Because this is something that drives me nuts about, are we at time? Something that drives me nuts about our industry is we throw around a lot of buzzwords and everyone's talking around each other because we say CRM, we say marketing automation, we say lead management, and it's like, what does any of this mean? So I would say probably what Paul was saying that we were building was our sales and retention and pipeline, where you get a lead into HawkSoft and you say, well, here's a lead, substatus pre-qualified or substatus referral. And then you go, oh, okay, now I've moved on to the quote stage. Quote pending, quote sent, quote accepted, then we take them on to the next one. So that's sales pipeline. What we are building with Task Center, Ryan's probably watching at home and he's probably throwing stuff at the screen. Task Center, the ambition there is automated tasks, where there's a process and a described workflow where you say, okay, I got this lead, I had my initial outreach call. The system takes it from there. The system says, okay, we're gonna send them an email, and then in 2 days, we're gonna give you a reminder to call them. And if they don't pick up, we're gonna send another email. If they do pick up, then we're gonna say, okay, you get the quote. So there's a lot of automation there. Task Center and tasks, I think, is probably what Paul was talking about. We also have come to realize we are not a marketing automation company, and we're okay with that. We do believe that a level of automation is table stakes. You need it as agents. So we're going to provide that. But if you're a large organization like Bogus, or even, honestly, I'd say all three people up there have larger agencies to a certain extent, you might need something more powerful. And so it's my job to make sure you can work with them.
And integration will be.
Exactly, yeah. So we want to deliver as much as we can within our expertise, and then we want to listen to these conversations. I might have missed that this was on the agenda, and I saw someone asked front desk, like, "Hey, where's that conversation about outside technology?" I'm like, I'm going there. So I'm super grateful for this conversation, just to be able to learn. But if you see me, talk to me about what works for your agency. I'll do everything I can to get it connected. And then tomorrow at 2:30, I'm presenting about how to get people connected.
Yeah, and one of the things to kind of echo what Kenny was saying, since we're running short on time, is Amelia and Jennifer really do a good job of sending out information about CABs, customer advisory boards. Tasks wouldn't have happened unless there were certain people on those CABs to make sure that that's moving forward, to make sure that that automation is even a thought process in the future. So if you are willing to kind of devote a few weeks to it, and it's usually a bi-weekly meeting, and you do come across a CAB email, jump on and say you're interested. They'll tell you what it's all about, what specific thing. But HawkSoft is only going to be driven by what we recommend for them to do that's working within our agency. And I see maybe 30 people in here. All of our agencies operate completely differently, right? And it's trying to make their lives easier because they're hearing it from all. What are you guys at? 20,000 users now?
Yes.
So it's tough. Something to think about there.
Cool. Thank you very much, everybody.